So I wanted to show off a little bit of the textures that I've been working on. Here I'm going to showcase them behind the Catherine Palace project that I've been working on. Now, what I realized was that I could change the models of different items, or at least the textures of those items, not the items themselves. I used Blockbench for this. First, I started with changing some buttons because I didn't use every different kind of button. I made a handful of chairs because obviously there are no chairs in Minecraft, and it just bothered me when trying to build palaces and other buildings that I couldn't even put chairs down. So I made these 4 different chairs. We have a nice rustic red painted chair, a nice dark oak wood chair. Then we have a more fancy one, which I have used as a throne in some of the builds I've done. And then we have a nice fancy gilded white painted one. So I thought those would be a nice little addition to how I do the game. I also changed one of the buttons to look like a clock. This is actually a model of a clock that Thomas Jefferson designed while he was in France and is now currently over his bed in Monticello. You can actually, or at least the last time I was at Monticello, buy replicas of this clock. It's not cheap, but I always thought that was kind of fun. I also, while fiddling around, decided to make a couple of other little models out of the buttons. There we go. And these were some of the first things that I did. So I might go back and try to change things around just a little bit. But for now, I kind of like how simple they are. Now, those were the buttons. I also realized that I don't use every gate. So I decided to go in and use some of the gates for different purposes. Here we have a demi-lune card table. And when you open the gate, because that's a different model, the top folds down when the leg swings out. There we go. I also, because each gate has not just 2 states, but actually 4 because it can be in wall, decided to make the in wall version different. And that I used a debug stick to do. There we go. A nice secretary's desk. I thought that would look good in some of the rooms, just a nice little piece of furniture. Nothing too flashy, but something that at least makes the room look a bit more lived in. I also used the birch fence gate to make wheels. Now, the reason why I used buttons and gates to make these items is because the orientation changes depending on how you're standing, which makes them more applicable. In contrast to this, I decided to make lava-filled cauldrons look a certain way. Now, this model for the cauldron was already in the ancient Roman texture pack, and I like the way it looks, and I used it plenty. But when you fill it with lava, it turns into a clawfoot bathtub. Only problem is it always faces this direction, which I can live with. It's okay that I'll never have one that goes the other way. I just thought this at least would be nice, and whenever I use it, I'll make sure that the bathroom is properly oriented. I also thought it was funny because if you try to hop in the water, it's a little hot. But these items do orient in all 4 directions. Now, we have just the plain birch gate. When I open it, it turns into a medium-sized wheel. Now, of course, that means that the small wheels I can't walk through. The medium-sized wheels I can, but it's just for decoration, so I don't mind that. Then, if I make this gate in wall, while it's open, it turns into a large wheel. Again, I can walk through it, but that's all right. I don't mind. And having the 3 different sizes of wheels is really handy for making carriages, making cars, and making trains eventually. I haven't gotten around to that yet, but I will. And then the closed version just turns into a bar, which will be handy for making for the drive wheels on trains, but also having this for carriages. Keep the horses in. So, of course, they're delicate because whenever you put something next to it, there we go, it snaps back. So I always keep my debug stick handy. It is something that's more relevant to playing in creative mode, but there's so many different woods that you can make fence gates out of. I figured I'm okay with just sacrificing a few for the sake of doing this texture pack. And then crimson fence gates, I decided to make into slanted balustrades for staircases. And then the in-wall version goes down. Now, unfortunately, I can only have the angles through block bench to be at either 45 degrees or 22.5 degrees, which I would actually need something somewhere slightly above 22.5 degrees to make these connect, but I'm okay with it. I can live with it. Maybe at some point in the future I'll try to change it around, but for now I think that this is good enough for me. And then the open version just changes which side it's on, like that. So, other little things I've experimented with that I can't promise will always be in the texture pack. Here's a jungle pressure plate. I made it into a little model of the Palais Garnier, a very rough model. I did realize, unfortunately, that making these items in block bench, they can get a little complicated, and I don't need a million models that are slowing down my computer. So this was just an experiment. I might take it out at some point, but I never really use jungle pressure plates anyway. So, and that's what it looks like when it's activated. It's actually the same thing for all of these buttons. See? So they are still active buttons because this is a texture pack. It is not a mod. I haven't changed the inherent qualities of any of these items. All I changed is what they look like. I built holograms, basically, which I don't need a working chair for Minecraft. I just want it to look like a chair. So those are some of the biggest changes that I've made to this texture pack, things that I'm somewhat proud of. I've also done plenty of textures that I use in a lot of my buildings, wood panels. Some of the things I haven't gotten around to yet. I'm okay with the copper texture as it is in the default Minecraft for now. At some point I might make small changes to it, but for the most part it's okay. Same thing with tough deep slate. I may make small changes. I will show off for candles. Now I did borrow from another texture pack for candles, and I'll make sure to give credit for that. That's what their one candle looks like. I made a 2-prong candelabra with 2 candles. 3 candles actually becomes 5. I wanted to see if I could make an Advent wreath, and I could. This is actually the most complicated model I think that I've made for this texture pack. I never use just 3 candles, so I was okay with making it look like this. And also this is the only color. It doesn't matter how many different color candles you try to use, it always looks like this. I may make changes to that in the future, but for now, I'm okay with it. And then 4 becomes a 4-prong gold candelabra. So I think that those are all of the major model changes. When it comes to just adjusting the textures, I did make a few of the shulker boxes look a bit different. Ah, there are actually two more that I'll show right after this. So with the shulker boxes, yeah, here we go. There we go. Looks like a little nightstand. Again, the actual box still comes out. It's just invisible, but I'm okay with that. We got some shelves. There we go. We have a table. It's a little wonky. I'll probably make a few changes to it in the future, but as it is, I kind of like it. And at least it's a surface. You can put things on top of it. Now, we have three shulker boxes that make a long case clock. It's not working. I'm not sure if it is possible to make it work while only in a texture pack. That's something I'm still trying to figure out. I don't have a lot of hope for it, but I thought it looked nice anyway, just as decoration. And also for a mantle clock or a wall clock, something with a shorter pendulum. And then the other two items that I made significant changes on are dropper, which I've never really used in the game, and then crafter, which I also don't really often use. So the dropper I made into a harpsichord. Now the texture of it actually comes down lower than the block is placed. That's because usually when you place something like this, it's going to be out in the middle of the room or at least a little bit away from the wall. That way you don't run into the issue of invisible textures. There we are. So I tried to make one that could open up when the dropper is activated. I haven't figured that out yet. I did make a model for it, but no luck yet. For now, though, I think it's nice. I think it looks good. It looks better than the block-built pianos and other keyboard instruments that I tried to make. It's just a nice little addition to have. Then here we have the crafter. This one, because you usually put it up against a wall, I did make sure that it has a floor underneath. This is just dark oak planks because that's a lot of the floors that I use. And I made sure that the back, there we go. Sometimes if you have it up in a corner of a wall, you can kind of see through the block, but it's not as noticeable. When I didn't have a floor built in underneath, it made everything invisible below, which was a problem. But this looks like a Victor Victrola. I actually have one myself from 1919. It's a hand crank, no electricity. And when it's activated, the lid lifts up. And you can see just a little rough design of a record down there with the plain arm. Now, the way that these models were designed, the horn was actually below where the record was, and you would open the front doors. The design is slightly wonky because this should actually be a little higher up and these top doors should be a little lower down because they open up the space for the horn. And then down below, it's just a cabinet space to store your records. But since it's not actually a working model, I thought it was okay. I do wish that I had made jukeboxes look like this, but the way that the jukeboxes look in the Roman texture pack that I've been using for years and years and years actually make nice heating units under windows. I really like the wood panel side, so I've used these in the walls and even ceilings for tons and tons of buildings. And if I tried to change the model texture of this, to look like a Victrola, it would ruin 90% of the buildings that I've done. So the other thing is that I don't think I can have a separate activated model texture for jukeboxes the same way I can for a crafter where it's opened. So I'm okay with the crafter not being an actual music playing device, and I don't often use crafters. I also thought, well, even if you have something on top of it, it's going to look a little funny, but you can at least have it in the corner if you want to be using it as a crafter, which would just be when you're playing in survival. And also, nobody has to use my texture pack if they don't want to. So I mostly do creative nowadays. And if you want this texture pack for creative purposes, well, now you have a Victrola that when activated, the lid lifts up. So I hope you enjoyed my showcase of some of the custom models that I did through Blockbench. I will make sure that I make a few more videos that show off some of the buildings and then some of the textures that I've done for blocks. I've worked on a handful of the decorated pots. I did some of the stained glass. Most of the stained glass is still from the ancient Roman texture packs that I used. I just made little changes here and there. But all in all, I'm happy with this texture pack so far. I've rebranded it as ClassicalCraft, and I do have it up on Planet Minecraft. So I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope you get to check it out. Thanks. Bye.